earlier in the morning, I gave you an example, guys, of, a friend of ours that, is the quintessential business person, succeeded, runs his own businesses in 3 different countries, travels all over the world to have meetings with people. But this man, in the beginning of his career, when he had to address crowds, would die. Literally, he would die 1,000 deaths because he was not able to stand in front of people and have a conversation. I watched this man almost wet himself, was in a sweat because he could not raise his head and speak to a crowd of people here at KICC in Nairobi.
Yes.
And he had the fear of public speaking, which is something that a lot of people suffer from today, and that we are required at some point, regardless of your career, you're required at some point to do in some kind of capacity. And it's a thing. We don't think that it is, but it really is. And that's the conversation that we'll be having this morning with Odhiambo Otieno, who is a communication coach. And he joins us this morning as we talk about the fear of public speaking and raising confident society of kids. Odhiambo, good morning.
Good morning, Du.
How are you?
Very well.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
This is a thing that we all, at one point, we all come in contact with one way or another. Yeah. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, today's proverb is from Tunisia, and Dennis is going to share that with you, at some point. And when he's not helping you fix your chair, we can be real about some of these things where technology does the thing, or when the chairs do the magic.
He had to sit on it himself.
I know.
Yeah. That proverb will land properly.
So Dennis will share that proverb with you, and then we would love to get your interpretation of the same. Hi, Dennis.
I'm back.
Oh, wonderful.
No public speaking
No
issues.
public speaking issues. Yeah, I'm from the seat of power, so public issues, no problem. But today our proverb comes from Tunisia, whose capital is Tunis. And one of the greatest things about Tunisia that I've just gathered is they have this great architecture that they call blue and white villages. Now, these are the villages of Sidi Bou Said, and is famous for its beautiful blue and white architecture and stunning Mediterranean Sea. Now, one thing about them as well is their traditional music, which is called Malouf. I know you love music, Mark, and it's a type of Andalusian classical music, which is a key part of Tunisian heritage. The diverse heritage that I talk about is about, they have been influenced by the Berber, the Phoenicians, Roman, Arab, Ottoman, and French culture. So when you talk about a mixture of diverse heritage and cultures, just go to Tunisia. And our proverb today says, a one-eyed person among the blind is king.
A one-eyed person among the blind is king.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody with the slightest advantage over a common fatality or a common error can succeed. That's my basic interpretation. Yeah. So long as you have some slight advantage over what I call the tragedy of commons. So then you can rule or...
Wow. Tragedy of commons.
And you know what's funny? The only interpretation I've had all these 4 hours is when your family was the first one to buy a TV in the village, you are king.
When you become the first kid in the hood to have a bicycle, people will kill.
Yes. Or an Xbox. Yes.
Well, all right then. That's the stuff that we look at, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Odhiambo, we speak it. I think for some of us, we take it for granted that you can speak in front of people and you don't think twice about it. You can actually just you can say, I could stand in front of 1,000 people and be okay. Maybe it's a training issue, or it's just, something that you had when you were growing up, or whatever the case may be, or if you had a talent from the beginning. But the reality is that there are very many people, also from my reading, in the majority actually, who are unable to stand before people and have a word or two.
Yeah.
Even people who are in those roles, they could be religious leaders, they could be leaders in government, or they could be institutional leaders, whether it's in corporate or otherwise. But this doesn't start when they're grown-ups.
Yeah.
The fear of being in front of people and having to open your mouth to relay a message starts when they're young. So can you talk to us a little bit about the fear of public speaking and where it all originates from? And I guess for some of us, we take it as, it's not an issue because, what? You get up, you speak, you go, right?
Can I give you an anecdote? You know how people dream that they are standing in front of people and they are naked and it's a scary dream?
I don't know how people do that, but okay.
You've heard of it.
Tell us of the experience.
It has never scared me.
It hasn't had...
Like, I have had the dream, but it doesn't scare me.
Right. So it could help, it would make us think that then everybody is like that.
Yes.
So talk to us about the fear and where this originates from and how people actually do suffer it.
Good. So, first of all, thank you so much. I think in the history of Spice FM, this becomes one of the first where we talk about something that is children-focused, which is very beautiful. And I must thank you, of course, for this. The fear of public speaking is what we otherwise know as glossophobia. Glossophobia.
Okay.
Glossophobia is actually not a disease. It is just a condition that somebody finds themselves in. And 70% of the world's population is suffering from glossophobia.
70%?
Yes. So whenever you see 10 people, 7 of them are not able to speak in public.
That's the major... Is there something like a major majority?
A vast majority.
Because I would have thought it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there were more that are afraid than those who are not, but I didn't realize that it was that high.
It is so high.
Yes.
It is 70% of the world's population. And it is even getting worse with the advent of AI as we move forward. As you realize, of course, right now, is that AI will not do away with public speaking. Perhaps the only thing that will remain standing is public speaking. Now, how does glossophobia come to be? Doctors will tell you that when a child is born, the child comes in with the genes of the parents, but nothing else. Which means everything else is learned along the way. And that takes us straight into neuroplasticity. And how do we understand the training of the brain? Because
what now?
Neuroplasticity.
In English?
What be that?
Neuroplasticity basically refers to how the mind or how the brain trains itself to new ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, most of us put a permanent block on imaginary issues or on issues which are transient. For example, you could say to yourself that I cannot speak in public. That is blocking yourself from the capacity of your brain. Your brain can do so much. And so neuroplasticity is what teachers, who we call masters of pedagogy, what they use
Masters of what?
Pedagogy.
Today's going to be that day.
Today is that day.
Strap up.
We need to tell our listeners to go look for that thing called a dictionary so that we can follow, because even me, I do not know what that masters is.
Master
Which university is it given?
Of course, master of pedagogy is being a professional in handling children. So of course you are a master of pedagogy, Ndu is, and I believe my brother also is, if he has children already. So the problem comes in when we define children, because children grow up in some defined environments. And one of the biggest tragedies that happen is when parents desire to live in their children's life and not live their lives. I don't know if that is understandable. You had your traumas growing up, but now you've given birth to some cute boy, cute girl, and instead of allowing the child to be,
someone doesn't want that word. Cute.
That cute people.
Yeah, we had a conversation about
it's been a whole thing.
Especially that cute boy business. But it's okay, continue.
Please carry on.
So you find that once we have our children, we want to live our lives in the children and not letting the children live their lives as absolute as they should, so that their neuroplasticity is not interfered with. Okay? So when you define an individual, they rarely grow. All right? And this comes to the point of now public speaking, where we discuss, one, is somebody able to speak? It goes to the issue of confidence. And maybe we need to ask ourselves the question, what is confidence? It's the most misconstrued word in the world right now. It is assumed to be brevity, but it is not. Confidence is actually reconciliation, a reconciled self. reconciling your realities versus your desires. Now, let me give an example. When I take a date from you,
Yes.
and we meet in the street,
Yes.
and I haven't paid you that debt for, let's say, a period of 10 months,
Yes.
I'm not likely going to be able to meet you.
Yes.
I will take a corner.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I lack the confidence to meet you.
Yeah.
But if I took your money and I am able to pay you, or I'm able to communicate and say, I am not able to pay this money now, within the next few days or within the next few months, I'll be able to pay you money. So when we meet in the street, I'll be able to say hi. I want you to understand confidence from that perspective. Most people are not confident because they promise themselves things that they don't deliver to themselves. So children, if they grow in a conflicted environment where at home they're this controlled child, but in school they're this new personality, this is already a conflicted child. So this child loses the confidence. That's one. Two, if a child is defined at home different, for example, us who grew with African mothers, you know what I mean, yeah?
Yes.
You'd be called all manner of names, but again, they will be sweet. And you'll most likely lean to your mom's end,
Yes.
unlike your dad's end. Why? When a dad defines you, that's it. And that's, even if you go back to the Bible, you will realize them talking about something called a curse. A curse of a father is heavier. So I want to just bring that back down and step it down into public speaking, that when a father defines a child, it is more expensive and long-lasting as compared to when a mother defines a child. Now, when you define a child to be stupid as a father, the child grows up believing that he's actually stupid. But indeed, sometimes they're not.
But Otieno, as we have the discussion, it seems as though personally the healing needs to start from the parent.
He's talking to you. Eh?
Yeah,
Yes.
You're feeling it.
Yeah, the healing needs to start from the parent because if they do not understand the baggage that they carry, they have a possibility of influencing how this child grows and hence affecting how they engage and how they speak in public. So just how critical is it for parents out there to understand that it's about time you healed your past and allowed your kid to just be themselves?
A very important question. Most parents grow up and fail to reparent. I always advise, before you get married, or even if you're married and you're aware now, you need to redo the work. Why? We were brought up differently, and most of our parents were not aware of mental health, wellness, mental wellness that we talk about lately.
No. It was
Yeah.
shunned. It was shunned. You don't discuss those things.
You don't discuss those things.
What do you mean you're mentally unwell?
Exactly. And mental wellness to them was very grave, to
Yes.
the extent of schizophrenia.
Yes.
All right. That's what they maybe saw as mental issues,
Yeah.
where people walk and pick stuff by the streets or something like that. But it goes back down to how they were brought up. Depression, were they allowed to express themselves? Because there's something I call autonomy of decision making. Now, most people did not grow up with autonomy of decision making. Their decision making processes were influenced and controlled by their parents. And so most of parents who are listening and watching us today understand very well that who they are today is largely what was given to them by their fathers and mothers. All right? Now, that upbringing style is what they're trying to do with their children as well, trying to define them and telling them, I want you to be this, I want you to be that, I want you to do this. If your child wants to go swimming or wants to go interact with other kids, you try to slow them down, tell them, no, it's not supposed to be that. So you deny a child autonomy of decision making. Now, once you're denied autonomy of decision making, any day, you are already denied the essence of existence as the whole that you are.
You know, I'm quite intrigued with this conversation because we are talking about public speaking.
Yeah.
But the matters you're touching about are first so widespread in Kenyan society, right? I can give you a dozen examples.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, what is the real problem that you're defining? Is it our society that is producing people without confidence? without the ability to make decisions by themselves, being defined by a father's statement. Is it society or is it just families? Because every time you speak, I can imagine so many times and so many people who have seen go through such things.
I will define my problem as one. It is the family, because the society comes from a basic unit, and the basic unit of the society is a family, which is composed of a parent or parents and children.
Yep.
All right. So and the family is the first school where any child goes to. I always say it's the first university, and eternal university. Because even as you are today, I'm quite sure, if your father and mom is alive, you
Thank God they are.
thank God.
Yes.
You'll be calling them for some advice. And at times, you could be in the deep end, so you could just be happy. You still call your parents. Why is that? Because that's the first university. That's where you get your identity.
Yeah.
So public speaking starts from the family. And it starts from a very original point, which is identity. How do you identify as a human being? Because that identity is either what you get or what you are given. Now, in the morning, as I was watching the earlier shows, I realized, for example, there's a problem of listening. Okay? And when somebody has a problem of listening, they would want to talk over you.
We have no idea who you're talking about.
Even me, I have no idea. They have a problem. They would want to talk over you. You ask questions, they want to talk over you.
Yeah.
That is a very key pointer to somebody who was not listened to as a child. And so, as they grow up, they want to overspeak so that you give them the full attention. Whether you talk or not is not their concern. Their concern is you have listened to what they're saying.
Okay.
All right. So that's an indicator.
That's interesting. So essentially what you're saying, Odhiambo, is that you can find later on in life that there are certain expressions or ways in which one would behave that have direct pointers from when they were younger.
Of course.
Now, what are some of those, apart from now this one that you've talked about, where somebody who's not listened to, is difficult for them to listen?
Two, before I go to that example, I want to start with an opener by saying that if you ever meet a self-made person, you must know that you're staring into the horrors of unskilled labor. If you ever meet a self-made person, you must know that you're staring into the horrors of unskilled labor.
Elucidate,
now,
please.
This implies that people come from somewhere. People are made by others. And somebody who is an offshoot, just comes from nowhere, that is clearly defined, has a problem of interaction. Because there is no proper molding around them as they grow. And so how then do we tie this to the question you asked, that how do we identify that somebody had a problem growing up? Number one is over-submissiveness. Somebody who is overly agreeable had trauma growing up, and they were told that everything must go. Everything that the other person who has authority has must come to be.
Pretty much somebody who can't say no.
Who can't say no. That's very dangerous. Somebody must learn to say no. That's number one. Number two is people who don't listen, as I've explained. Listening is a skill which is trained. It is not natural. Hearing is natural, but listening isn't. So listening must be trained. Then number three, we have the problem of people who fear to speak. Whether you give them a chance to take to the podium, they just fear to speak. And fear is good. Let me position it as anxiety. They have anxiety when it comes to speech. Now that is a very bad indicator of a very traumatizing upbringing. Now we also have people who, when they take to the stage to speak, they speak for a very long time. All right? It means they don't structure their speech to the key points. And I will go to the explanation of how a speech will be structured. Okay? They like pastors. They shout, most of them. They growl.
You know that.
But if the pastor doesn't shout, that's hear what God is saying.
That's part of the marketing.
Yeah.
You know, when TD Jakes came out and he was speaking like that, everyone had to copy. I had friends who used to speak normal. until they get a microphone. And the Lord, he says, ni marketing, bro.
It's not.
Okay.
In fact, trauma. It's trauma.
Trauma.
It's trauma.
Really?
Yes. It's trauma because if, as I'm speaking here, you can listen to me well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you are getting what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And my speaking is very paced.
Yes.
Naturally, I'm not a very slow speaker. I'm a very fast speaker. But I've trained myself.
Okay.
So I'm a living example of what I'm talking about. To speak very slowly. And all of us who went to a school of journalism, myself included, we understand English for journalists.
Yes.
And there you are taught how to pace your words
Yes.
into 10
And
words per line.
enunciate.
And enunciate.
Yes.
Right.
Correct. All right?
Yeah.
So most of them who you see, there's a problem.
But you won't get to the kingdom of heaven if we don't hear the message like that.
Have you seen how, for example, allow me to say this. Have you seen, for example, how the Catholic priests come to...
Okay, yeah, there's a point, but we still get the message.
Yeah.
You are in very dangerous territories. There are entire denominations that are based off of that shouting. Eh?
Yeah.
You can't even be an intern pastor if you can't speak like that. But I'm curious, what you said it's a problem.
Yeah.
What is the problem that expresses?
It is the problem of thinking that people are not listening to you because you've not been trained on listening. My friend, listening is too deep. Listening is like interpretation, which is a whole unit in law school.
Oh, wow. So is that why then? It irritates me a little bit. So this is confession sessions, okay? So that's why sometimes, like even with a pastor, you say, can I get an amen? Because you want to reinforce that somebody's actually hearing what it is that you're saying.
Correct.
Or that somebody's actually listening to you. Or turn to your neighbor and repeat the thing that I've just told you because I can hear you.
Now, that is one.
There is another
Are we saying
one.
that there are issues with that when it comes to public speaking as well?
Of course.
Is it coming from fear?
Of course, it comes from fear.
I wish I could call all my pastor friends on WhatsApp calls. They listen to this because I've been arguing the same thing for years.
Yeah.
That I don't get the shouting. Even
shout at
in
me.
prayer, I'm like, how deaf is your God? Sorry, if you shout when you're praying, but same question. But you're giving very interesting insights. This thing called listening, you say it's very deep.
Yeah.
And it's actually a subject of study in law school. Please elucidate this depth.
Good.
Yeah.
Listening is attaching meaning to sounds.
Yes.
But also attaching meaning to vision. What you see.
Yeah.
Listening involves the eyes. Hearing only involves the ears. All right? So you can hear, but you don't listen. All right? That's why, for example, we say in governance, of course, which you guys do so well in, that the president listens to those. The presidency is the president and those he listens to. Those he listens to.
True.
Okay?
Yeah.
So anybody else who is an appointed officer, etc., would be there, but would not
necessarily be part of that kitchen cabinet. As
I
it's
see
called.
your headline today. Very nice. There's a problem already from there. You can understand what listening is about already. Because you don't need that much advices, for example,
Okay.
for you to have a functioning system. So listening involves a lot of concentration, putting away intentionally any distraction or detraction that may come your way. For example, we say that for you to be a very good listener, you need to keep eye contact.
Yeah.
Okay, why do you need to keep eye contact? To concentrate. Okay, and remember, the human brain can only concentrate a maximum of 40 minutes.
That's why classes is from 9 to 10:40.
And it's university.
9:40. Yeah.
Even in university where I lectured,
Yeah.
our lectures were 40 minutes maximum. And I will do 30 minutes, 10 minutes Q&A. Okay.
Which university was that?
Maseno University, of course.
Of course. Of course.
Let me tell you, I did engineering. I had 3-hour lectures. I still don't know what.
Exactly. You can't recall a lot of things. So listening has the bit of eye contact.
Yeah.
It has the bit of note taking. If you look at Dennis here, he has his notebook. If you look at me, I have mine. I'm wondering where yours is.
I have
know
never
you
taken notes my entire life.
Exactly. So you need to. That is already a sign of bad
You see?
Yeah. Oh, this one I'll disagree.
Odhiambo, your lesson has landed.
Let me be very clear. I learn by hearing. my entire life. And when I used to write notes, it would enter here, and I write, and I forget. So all my life, I've learned by hearing. It's a way of learning.
And by hearing, then you are doing the word.
Yes.
Of course, there are people who hear and then take notes later. It's called downloading. All right. Then there are people who write and then consume later. It's called uploading. Okay. So I'm very certain that in your wee hours, you'll be taking notes, trying to remember whatever was said, unless you're very exceptional, of course, which I see you could be.
But just for purposes of this, there is no situation under the sun right now that Mark is going to agree with you in terms of what we're going to do later. If we're saying that 70% of the world's population has glossophobia or suffers from some form of glossophobia, which, if you had just joined in, we know that that's a fear of speaking in public, and we are also saying that it's in various or varying degrees, whereby, like my friend that I gave an example of was crippling, couldn't, and then others, from what you're saying, that there will be different coping mechanisms that they will use during this public speaking. And clearly from what, and now I get it, because this is fantastic, because I don't understand why you need to ask me every 3 minutes in a sermon whether I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. I can hear what you're saying. But the fact that you want to keep asking me and, turn to your neighbor and slap them upside the head, the kind of thing, to make sure that they're hearing. Now I get it. Now it makes sense to me as to why people do it. It's to reinforce that people are actually hearing what you're saying, because you need that to then be able to cope in this public speaking. That's very interesting. What are some other things that we see that happens during public speaking? Not for us to judge, but then for us to be able to have an understanding of what's actually happening. What are some of the other things that we would see manifested?
Good. So when somebody sets out for public speaking, there are a few things that happen before you get on the stage. Public speaking, just like any other field of life, has the bit of performance and presence. As you know, even in parenting, we have people who are performers, what I call performing parents. And then we have those we call present parents. Now, performing parents are those that throw money and such things to problems. But present parents are the ones who go deep and sit with the children in the occurrence, what is happening, and they try to discuss so that they can have what I call empathetic feeling of what the situation actually could be. So public speaking also follows that, in that there are those who are performers who prepare and deliver. But there are those who are sitting in it and they relate to the audience. And when they go to speak, the audience identifies with them. Now that brings the difference between somebody called an orator and a gifted speaker. Okay? Now, if you remember, an unfortunate example to issue here, Adolf Hitler was perhaps one of the best performers in public speaking. He's one of the best who utilized the media and who gave speeches so people could pay to come and listen to him. A politician who people could pay to come and listen to him.
He was also a psychopath, but okay.
Exactly. and if you look at him, for example, if we dissect Adolf Hitler properly, you'll find that he had a lot of trauma growing up. Up to the age of 21, Adolf Hitler was a nothingist.
Yes.
He had nothing for himself, nothing going on apart from the painting that he was doing in Vienna.
Which he also failed in.
Which he also failed in spectacularly. And also remember that during the big war that was there, World War II, Adolf Hitler preserved the paintings more than life. Key pointer to very many things about him. So Adolf Hitler was a performer. All right? But then we have somebody like Barack Obama, who is not a performer, who is an orator. He sits and relates with the masses. This is a clear contrast of two successful public speakers, but who are both coming from different backgrounds. So in public speaking, there are those who just prepare, and they know how to manipulate the audience. They say what the audience needs to hear, and they go with it. It's a problem that we even face in Kenya today.
Really?
Good. Yeah. It is there.
Really? You know someone?
Yes, I know so many. I know so many.
Okay.
And
just a quick one.
Trump is not a public speaker. Trump is a TV show guru. He has no standing on the field of public speaking because he's so incoherent and he uses repetition as his only style in public speaking. He says it's big, it's broad, delusional for me. In fact, I dare say that there's some gaps that need to be addressed with his trainers. But you see, the press secretary is doing pretty well. Yeah. In fact, I'd rather listen to the press secretary of the Trump administration to get where the Trump administration is going than Trump himself.
Interesting.
Okay. So someone like Barack Obama, in his 2004 address to the DNC, you realized, even you who is in Kenya, you could fall in love with how this gentleman was speaking. After he was elected into office, this fellow was invited across the world to speak in places where the noble of the nobles have spoken. It's because he knew how to relate with his audience. Okay? Now, there are those who understand that before you move to speak, you must understand your audience. There are those who know that before you go to speak, you need to understand the needs of your audience. The two are very different. If I write a letter to Ndu, and write a letter to you, and another one to Ednah, all of them will sound different. Because I may be addressing Ndu from where I am. And all, you must observe that many people view things from how they are, not how you are.
Yes.
All right? So when I write a letter to him, the wording will be different, the intention will be different. Why? Men mostly are logical.
Yes.
So I will try to appeal to his logos.
Yes.
All right? Ladies are emotional, majorly.
For the most part.
For the most part.
Yes.
And it's biological. It is not a thing of the brain. It's just biological. So if I write to them, if I write to Ndu, I will most probably not write the same language I'm using with him. Why? I'm appealing to her emotions. Okay? And
so you can bribe me.
So that I can so that I can arrive at a favorable decision.
Otherwise known as bribery.
Yes, otherwise known as bribery. But one language that is understandable amongst every other person is when you speak to the hero in each and every one of us. There is a writer called Keith Firazi who wrote the book Never Eat Alone. Maybe you need to go and read it. It's a very interesting book on networking. And Keith Firazi says that the greatest human desire is validation and nothing else. So tie this point to the point that I was saying, the base of public speaking, which is identity.
Yes.
Identity comes from validation. Yes. You dress how you dress, you behave how you behave, because you desire a particular set of validation. Now you can self-validate, but you also receive validation from the outside world.
Okay.
So, Otieno, how does environment that we belong in a daily basis influence our ability to speak? Case in point, I grew up in an environment where, we were in an estate, but we had common facilities where we could go play and whatnot. But here in Nairobi, we live in apartment buildings where a kid only knows their parent and an Xbox, pretty much. The only other point where they're outside is probably in another school that is an apartment-like school, and nothing much happens. How do these constricted environments and an inability to associate with many affect someone's speech?
Good. Now, you will note that we are social beings. Now, when the social aspect of us is removed from us, then something dies in us slowly. Now, what composes the social nature of human beings? I have a book with me right here called Human Nature.
Yes.
You must have gone through it. It clearly describes how then do humans get the identity. They get the identity from their society. Okay? Now, when we grow up with children, or we bring up children in concrete jungles, we are denying them that bit of social interaction. Let me borrow a leaf from Malcolm Gladwell, The Outliers. Describes children as three forms. One, a child who is brought up by a poor parent. Poor here in Kenya will define as somebody living below $1. Okay. Two, a middle-class child. Here's our children, basically. And then three is a child from a wealthy family. Children from poor families, Malcolm Gladwell says, will always find their parents trying to fight for them, but they also join the fray to help push. Because the only thing that they learn is how to go up.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Children in middle class families have a bit of a problem. They are taught to question everything
Why?
because their parents are just getting into the field of realization that there is a lot of possibilities. So they're in between poverty and success. And this period calls for a lot of questioning of everything, and they majorly mistrust. So children from middle class families need more work as compared to children from poor families. Now, I will come to your point. The third stage is the wealthy children, perhaps the most spoiled. Why? Their parents fight for them endlessly. They don't talk. They don't talk because, they want to go to a school that is higher. What does the parent do?
Provide.
They phone.
They
They just phone. Yeah, and this is my son. I want a space for him in your school. The child does not know how to face what we call challenges.
Yeah.
Okay. So once you deny a child this chance to face challenges, they cannot learn how to express themselves. Because for what are they going to express themselves? All right. So yes, the society plays a key role. And as I've explained, middle class children who, of course, live in where you're talking about, high-rise apartments, where we don't know the neighbors, and we're not interested in knowing the neighbors.
Yeah.
Because for us, what is important is networking in the sense of, do I meet you and take a photo with you, and that's it?
Yes.
The wealthy ones are not about meeting you and taking photos. They're about forming genuine connection, relationships, which they must not cash in now. They will cash in later in life. Okay?
You are such a powerful statement.
You understand, Dennis?
Get you.
Yes. So when a child is not given the opportunity or is not exposed to difficulty, this child will not know how to express themselves, number one. Number two, do you give this child a chance to sit with you at the dinner table or at the dining table and ask this child, what did you fail in today? How are you feeling? Without dismissing the child and truly understanding that this is what my child is going through, and not solving for the child whatever problem he or she is going through, but asking them to solve it for themselves. For example, children who live in high-rise apartments. I'm one of them who live in high-rise apartments. My sons could come to me and tell me, we are bored. How do you deal with that situation, for example? When a child comes to you and tells you he's bored, how do you want to handle that? Now, how do you handle when a child tells that? You tell the child, let's find what you can do about it. Or what do you think you can do about it? Okay? Mommy, so-and-so has hit me. Do you want to pinch the child who has beaten them? No. You will be preparing the road for the child instead of the child for the road. So you must let the child go and sort it with them and give you a report. Tell them, go and sort it and come and give me a report on what has happened.
Okay.
Now, when a child is crying overly, that is perhaps the biggest trauma that us parents go through, especially children between the ages of 5 and 8. They cry a lot. That's when they gain their identity, actually, between the ages of 5 and 8.
Yeah.
Past that, you're doing nothing on a child.
You're done.
You're done. A child who is 8 is grown.
Oh, okay.
They're formed.
Yeah, they're formed. They have a slight chance up to the age of 12.
Yeah.
Slight chance. But past 12, you're not fixing them. And that's why we say we better fix the children than try to fix an adult. You see the challenges we're having.
You know,
Sorry.
Paulo.
I am so intrigued by what you're saying. I'm even wondering whether our topic was correct. It should have been parenting for speaking.
Maybe.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Connect for me this child who has been brought up right to an efficient speaker. Right? Because I can see the advantages in their character, I can see the advantages in the confidence and things like that. How does that then translate into them being a good listener, being able to connect their audience, and then being able to actually achieve what they want to do with their public speaking?
Good. Let me correct the two for you. One, a child who is listened to and a child who is validated and a child who is given the chance to express themselves without prejudice, but also given the chance to listen without judging others, grows up to be wholesome. These are the most stable children in most of the organizations that you are in today.
Across social strata?
Across social strata.
Okay, this is interesting.
Very.
Because when we talk about, I have heard parents who will say, well, if you over-validate your child, if you let them know that you're proud of them, if they've done one thing or the other, and if you talk about this validation without prejudice, if you actually listen to them and hear what their thoughts are, that essentially you are making them weak. If you show affection, if you make them feel as though they are favored, valued, and all of these things that you speak of, that you're actually weakening.
Okay, there's the bit of weakening, true, where it's over-validation. Same to overconfidence, okay? Which means that they don't do the work. You do the work for them. That's dangerous, of course. When, for example, you say, oh, you've done so well in school, and truly the child has scored 20%. There's no improvement. That is false. That is faulty. And so you are denying the child autonomy of decision making, because when you lie to them and tell them you've done so well after he's beat somebody,
there's a problem.
That's a problem right there. But if there's a problem, he beat somebody and you told them, can you go and sort it with them or apologize? Then he comes back and tells you, oh, I have apologized and I truly realized I did wrong. This is a child who's growing up knowing that actually there are inhibitions.
Right.
Absolute freedom is dangerous.
Indeed.
There must be inhibitions.
Absolutely.
And a human brain that is having no inhibitions needs quick medical attention. All right? So a child who grows up properly validated, all right? Not overly, properly validated.
Properly validated.
Properly listened to. Properly allowed to speak. Properly allowed to interact. In organizations, they become the emergent leaders, not the appointed leaders. In any case, most of the appointed leaders that you know of, and CEOs majorly, if you look at them carefully, I tell you today, check your figures, 65% of them in the whole world are narcissistic.
That's interesting that you say that, because I was going to ask. I was going to say, I know a guy.
Yeah, because they've been taught to overperform.
But no, all of these people he's talking about, we have no idea.
I don't know who they are. But I was going to ask you then to make the connection between these behaviors that we see in children, and if they don't go checked, as if they go unchecked, then what would happen? And then you've answered that question. Because then I was going to say, so why is this important? Why is it important that later on in life you have somebody who's able to express themselves, speak well, not have these inhibitions? Why is that important? You can say, well, if somebody had an issue, let's deal with it. How will it affect them later? How will then will we be able to see? If we already know that by the time you're an adult, socialization has already taken place, you're already formed in terms of your character, there are behaviors you have which you can change, sure, but why is it important to make that connection then for later when we talk now about public speaking, about being in public? You know?
Let me tell you, as I have observed, and as you have observed, you've worked for quite some time, of course. You must have realized that most of the CEOs that you've worked with are not very good listeners. Not very good listeners. And they're not very empathetic. All right, but the mid-level managers are often very good. All right, because mid-level managers have been taught moderacy. Okay, and these are the ones who are willing to be made. So it's very easy for them to grow and become. But those who are never given the chance to express themselves, my friends, if you're not given a chance to express yourself as a child, you will grow up bottled, and you will explode on people.
Later on, and then we wonder what's wrong with this guy.
And even them, they don't know. It's like when somebody's stupid, we always say they don't know they're stupid. But you can observe that this person is actually stupid because what you're doing is actually silly. You need to retract. You need to have moderacy. Henry Gibson.
We don't know that.
Otieno, so there is this statement that is overly spoken about, and it is usually, especially in workspaces, you're here to be seen
and not to be heard.
And you find these are things that have been picked by individuals and they've even taken them home. So in terms of you'd say someone has picked trauma from work, taken it home, and it's usually a behavioral activity that people pick up along the way. Just how dangerous is such?
When you come from your workplace, you normally have something called residual anger. residual anger, residual frustration, residual what. That's why, you're advised that when you come from work, don't go straight home. When you come from work, go to, there's a reason as to why the coffee shops are in town. There's a reason as to why we have the parks in town. You need to go and offload.
Unwind.
And then go home. Because when you carry the wounds from work to home, I can be a recipient of your residual anger, and I may not be able to understand why you are downloading or offloading on me.
So that's the thing, isn't it?
Of course.
That you come from work and then you're just angry at people
Yes.
everywhere. People are wondering what happened to
exactly.
you.
Or you come from home to work in the morning, you've had a squabble with your partner, and before arriving here, I believe there's a very good room somewhere where you can sit. I can see very nice chairs outside there. You can sit and take a breather and dissociate the self from home to the self at work, because you're bringing the self at home to work, and it's not what you are employed for.
But you see, me, I work from home.
Dangerous. That's why it's not tenable.
Shauri yako umejiweka hapo
This
peke yako.
Work from home is not tenable.
This guy is disciplining my life.
Yeah. So you must understand that in the essence of your existence,
Yeah.
you have representatives. Yourself, you have representatives, what we call persona.
Yes.
Shakespeare
Yes.
described persona. If you go to mental health, they talk about personalities.
Yes.
You have different personalities.
Yeah.
Those personas are representatives. The one that comes to work
Yes.
should be different from the one that goes home. So you must learn when to hire and fire your representatives. Now,
Every day.
every
Stop being a
single
HR, man.
day, every single day, because you have to take in. You're like a sponge. You have to take in the load of other people. For example, when you come here, Dennis could be having a problem, and he wants to confide in Du. And Du has her own problems. She wants to confide in you. You have your own problems. Who do you confide to? Or who do you confide in?
The Lord Jesus
The Lord
Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, okay.
So as we absorb others,
Yes.
having that grace to absorb others
Yeah.
means, as a child, I was given the chance, the grace by my parent that I could do something wrong and they could listen to me and offer me a solution. So public speaking is not just about voicing, it's about character. How do you present? How do you present? It's very, very, very important. Dennis.
You've thrown it
so-
to me. I throw it back to Mark.
Yeah. So please give us your M-Pesa number for Sadaka. Because he's the first preacher who doesn't shout. But seriously, you've spoken a lot about the character and what people need to be, and I think we have a minute to
Yes.
this. What is the key message, key thing you'd like everyone listening to remember?
I would like everyone listening to remember that a child is a sum total of the environment they grow in. 2, I would like them to understand that for a child to be, we must grant them the independence of decision making, the autonomy of decision making, by not lying to them, by telling them the truth as it is. As much as it could be cruel, you can find a way to tone it down. But most importantly, allow your child to understand public speaking, because if they don't, they will not grow in their careers. The only sure way to leadership is nothing but public speaking. Thank you.
Odhiambo Otieno, thank you so much. I mean, that's been refreshing, and I think we need to do these more often. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Really appreciate that.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.